Alright guys, you know what time it is? It's time now for the Petential from Thought to Execution podcast. As you know, we've had the Execution podcast before. We've also had the live podcast where it was me and some guests where we went back and forth. This will be more of that eventually. I'm going to have some amazing guests coming on and it's going to be really cool. Some of the people I've got lined up and stuff. So, what is the Petential from Thought to Execution podcast actually about? Well, many times in life, there's certain situations where you get given all the knowledge or you get given sort of ideas or sayings or strategies to actually do something, but you don't implement on it, you don't act on it. For example, a diet maybe, you want to lose weight and you don't actually train and you don't actually lessen them meal sizes and you don't actually eat any healthier. You just fail to implement, even though you know it's the right thing for you. So what this podcast is about is how we actually get the thought, the idea, into implementation and into action. So, that's why it's called what it is. I might also call this sort of the mental stability podcast. That way we're talking, obviously it's the same thing. We're talking about getting your mental side strong so you're not overthinking, you're not over anxious, you're not over worried about what everyone thinks about you. You're simply just living almost a full life, like at least one that you can find happiness in, that you can find rewarding. As Jordan Peterson says, you've got to find the happiness to help you through the suffering. So this is what the Petential podcast is all about. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it just yet through the episode layout, but I have got some great ideas. So what should today's episode be about? Maybe it should be a story of how I got here, how this started, the idea behind the podcast. So how this all started was a few years ago. I'd always worked and I'd been quite, let's say, irresponsible, sort of, just doing dead-end jobs, not really caring about progress, not really caring about how I was viewed in the world, or just in general, not progressing as a person, not adding any value to my life, and just taking every day as it came. I wasn't very forward thinking. I was just living it every day as it was. Now, how did this negatively impact me? Well, if you don't plan, then you're going to fail, and that's exactly what happened. I lost 2 jobs, I lost a house, I lost friends, weight, and quite a lot of stuff. Like I was in debt, I had to sleep on a floor for 6 months. And when you think about that, that's not ideal, to say the least. So what actually became of that is I started to understand that it was on me. I'm not going to get the results in my life until I actually take a stand for myself, take responsibility for myself, and take action. As I said, the main thing there is responsibility and taking action. You have to take action. Sorry about that. You have to take action. So, where do we go from here? Basically, I went from that. I was still doing music and doing bits and bobs. And I went from that. And then one night, I was asked to do a speech at a mental health awareness night. And I stood up in front of about 200 people, all from my hometown. And I did the 5-10 minute speech called Snowball. You might have seen it, where it's just talking about my friend who I went to help out, went to talk to her, and she tells me about how, how hard her life's been, and then it changed to a conversation about her pet. Anyway, the performance, the live event, went really well. Like, I couldn't believe it. A whole room full of people who I thought would criticise me, would judge me, blah, 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 would, critique me on stage, all this kind of stuff, would heckle me. Anyway, they was silent. Like, you could hear a pin drop. And at the end, I got, a round of applause, which was great. I had people coming up to me, asking me what I'd seen, what I'd been through, if I can help them. And, it really touched people in a deeper core than what my music had. So that was sort of my first step on the journey. Then from that, I realised that, this is something I can do, be an influencer. I know how to help people overcome problems that I'd faced. And from that learning as well, obviously, the more you try and help people, the more you actually have to research and find out what actually works, because what works for you might not work for someone else, which is why I always have different steps, different strategies for different people. That's basically how I got to where I am today, where I do podcasts, live, events. I got live stuff online at the minute. We've got, 2 books out, both bestsellers, one in personal transformation and one in applied psychology. One's Execution of the Body, one's Execution of the Mind. There is a 3rd book in that series that I've not released yet. I will be releasing only for people I'm close to, like certain clients and stuff, called Execution of the Spirit. And that's an overhaul sort of idea anyway of what I've been up to. Obviously, we've got courses as well we're bringing out. We've got a USB stick, the You're Never Alone. But most of you guys, let's be honest, you're going to know me from my Facebook, my social medias, or my YouTube. So that's great. Like, that's fine with me. I don't mind you coming in, getting the free stuff, enjoying it, applying it to your life, because that's what it's all about. Giving and helping people change their lives as well. So that's how I started all of this, and it's just been growing ever since. I've got coaches, I've been learning, growing, and hard at work for a very long time. Every day I work on this without fail, So, where do we go from here? What's the next level? Well, I figured it's better to have other people on here, maybe who are successful, maybe who have overcome adversity, maybe who are struggling in general, and listen to their stories, their tales, their, strategies on how they made themselves feel happy or overcame problems or are consistently, struggling. And if in that case we get someone on the podcast who is struggling, I could do a live session right there coaching them, and you guys can sort of see how effective that can be and take some of that for yourself, or just snippets of little things they say can be really important to who you are. On my first Thought to Execution podcast, on the live one and the big one on the YouTube, you'll see that we've got me, Joe, and Wayne. And Joe says something incredible. You've got to live in the moment. You're only present right now, and that's when you should be focusing on. Don't fear the future. Don't, disrespect yourself and put yourself down because of the past. What happens right now is what defines who you are. And then on the second podcast, we had a friend of mine called Helen. She's an artist, incredible. And she said something that stuck with me on that podcast. She said, it's okay to feel sad sometimes. I think, if you didn't hear that, it's okay to feel sad sometimes. It's okay to be overwhelmed, to have hard days, to have difficult days. That's fine. And, I was going to say enjoy it, but embrace it. Know that you're going to have multitude of feelings. You're going to be angry some days. You're going to be upset some days. You're going to be frustrated. And allow them to be. You don't have to pretend that you're happy all the time. You don't have to pretend that you're okay all the time. What is better to do than, instead of bottling these thoughts up and these feelings up, is just sit there, embrace them for what they are, and then try and understand them. But we'll go into that in other sessions and stuff like that. So that's going to be the starting premise, but then obviously we're going to have clients on and stuff like that, people I've worked with who can come and tell us their story and how they grew. And I think every episode I will have a story about how I've seen things change, how I've changed, struggles I've overcame, problems I've overcame, and it's just going to be total transparency, in this kind of very private setting where you get to listen to me, my guests, and stuff like that. So it's going to be quite interesting, I think. It's important that, obviously, with these kind of ideas, you sort of test everything for yourself. What I say, it could help you, but on the other hand, you might take it into action and you see no results, and then you might feel even worse about yourself. I think it's important to know that you don't have to feel worse about yourself because you don't succeed, especially not the first time. And if it doesn't work for you, then maybe it just doesn't work for you. I've got people who, they hate having goals, and it really puts them off. But what they do love is having the motivation to think outside of themselves. And just sort of, have that dependency, like someone depends on them, the responsibility. That's what drives them rather than having a goal for themselves. So it's not through motivation of saying, oh yeah, I can't wait to have A, B or C. A lot of people are motivated by, I don't want to lose A, B or C, negatively. I think that's true about most of the population. I think most of the population are negatively affected by, or negatively motivated, and that's where their inspiration comes from. I mean, look, most people want certainty and security. That's why a lot of people sort of work for companies for years and years and years on end, because they feel safe in that company. And because of that, they can afford the sort of housing they want or the lifestyle they want. And they want to know that that's going to be available for a long time. But as this podcast is definitely going to help you understand, is that change is always around the corner. And when one thing's certain, something else won't be. And you've got to deal with that uncertainty and live knowing that things aren't always going to be the same. And that sort of preparing you for the future or preparing you for days where you don't feel at your very best. But does that mean all of this is going to be doom and gloom and horror stories and I overcome this problem and this and I do this and that? Nah, not at all. We're obviously gonna have some humorous guests on, some funny guys on, funny girls on. We're gonna maybe have some controversial stuff as well. There might be certain opinions that I don't have, that you do or the guest does, that conflict each other. Especially as with my core template, I sort of like being free. I like the idea of renting and then I can go where I want, stuff like that, opposed to having a mortgage and being stuck in one place. But again, that's a huge conversation, and that goes, two different people have two different positions on that, and they're both right because it's what suits them. So that's kind of the stuff we'll be getting into. What I want to know from you though for this first podcast is sort of get a bit of grounding of who you are, what you're looking for, what is it you're struggling with, or if you are struggling, maybe you just want to know how to help people if they come to you, and if they're struggling. What is it that attracted you to this podcast? Maybe you want to be mentally stable, to be not, you're not depressed, you're not unmotivated, you just, maybe you're lazy, maybe you're just not thriving, maybe, you've got a good job, you've got an okay relationship, you've got great friendships and all these kind of things that you want, but you're still not fulfilled. Maybe that's it. Maybe you need that purpose, that drive, that just one thing. We'll get into that as well, sort of how you can have a normal life, like as they say, normal, a productive life, and still make time for yourself to be creative and to be who you really think you are inside. Like I always say it, it's like you sort of dream when you're a child, you have these mad visions of who you could be, all this potential. And through experience, you start to lose those imaginative worlds that you build for yourself. I could do this, I could do that, watch. And you'll try straight away as a child, and you'll try and show off. As you get older and older, people beat into you that you're not good enough, that you can't do these things. And your value systems, the way you see your visions of the future, you really narrow them down. You really say, I couldn't have that. Oh, maybe I could get a promotion, but I probably won't. That cottage would be really nice, but it's probably outside my price range. I don't know if I can do it. I'm not talking about avoiding responsibility. I'm talking about, are you diminishing your own dreams and your own visions for yourself or your own passions just because of what everyone else around you tells you is the current system? Like, this is how it works, this is how you have to be. I really don't think that's the case. I think it's important to know that what doesn't work for one person will work for the other. So, where do we begin there? With your goal setting. How do you get that creativity back in your life when you've felt so certain about everything for so long? And those models may have provided you with a successful, life for yourself, but you're still not fulfilled. Why would you trust this random guy on a podcast? Well, a lot of people tend to turn to alcohol, drugs, stuff like that, or other ailments or whatever, implementation side of things, and they try and cover up that they have a passion that needs to be sought after. And I think that's a shame as well, when you allow all your visions to die, you allow your dreams to die, and you allow yourself to be put in this kind of box of defining yourself and saying, I couldn't have that, I couldn't have that. I mean, it is incredible the amount of talent I've seen within people, but because they didn't believe on themselves and they didn't believe they could do it, they never actually tried anything. And through that, I've had people who never believed that anyone would purchase their work, the stuff they create. And then within a couple of sessions with us, there was you setting up marketplaces and selling all the work, even if you're starting with your friends and family, doesn't matter. And they did a great job. Like, it was amazing just seeing them thrive when they started selling the work, how happy they was when they started serving a customer, whether the customer bought or not, how proud they was of the work and of themselves that they could do it. I've had people come to me who was so, again, talented, and they had no idea about how to actually get it on the market or get demand or to reach anyone. And then literally, again, a few conversations, a few ideas. Oh, maybe you could do this angle. Maybe if you put it across like this, and then they made, I think it was something like 1,400 quid in a couple of weeks, just from finding, a strategy and then implementing it and just saying, all right, okay, so this is sort of what Pete's saying for me is, I'll try a new angle with my marketing. I'll try a new angle with what I want to do. I'll try something that I've never tried before, and sort of just implementing a new idea. I mean, when you try a different approach for things over and over again, you're definitely going to get different results. That makes sense, right? You try something new, you'll get something new. Now, it might be failure again. You could fail on both sides, but you'll get different levels of failure. Why did this one fail? Why did this one fail? The reasoning might be different. And then through that, you can get practiced and get better and better and finally change, everything that's going on. So, as I said, sometimes it's not just your vision that you need to look into. It's sort of, how do you change everything that's around you? Maybe you have got the talent, but you don't believe in yourself. Maybe you just don't have the right strategy to bring it to market. Maybe you don't have the actual talent, but you believe you could do it. That's a strange one, right? You should be doing something else, but you don't know what it is. But like it's internal. It's this thing of, I could do something bigger and better, but I don't know where I'm talented. That's something that is called discovering your gift. We will go into that. We'll probably build a course on that eventually, or do something within our retreats, when we do our retreats, where you actually discover your gift. And when you do, like, it's not just what you're passionate about. It could be what you're just really good at. And because you're good at it, you sort of never really practiced with it, because I was good at this, so it doesn't need any practice. But what you could do is, if you did practice that thing you was good at, you could make it great and improve your lifestyle. Who knows? Within this series, you're going to find a lot of the time I talk about success, wealth, mindset, strong mind, stuff like that sort of sometimes gets a negative vibe. When I say success and wealth and strong, I don't mean, rich. I don't mean greedy. I don't mean that you have to take on all the problems in the world and feel like, you have to just live with all the problems and not feel. I want you to know that it's important to, when I say these kind of things, you define wealth for yourself, you define success for yourself, you define, strength. Strength could be the strength to open up and talk to someone about your problems. That's strength, to be able to say, you know what, for once I'm going to be honest to this person that I've never been honest to before. Maybe it's something like, I want to be successful. Well, success to me isn't a big bank balance. Success to me is me, my own little farmland, a couple of dogs, a good husband or wife, and, children or something like that. Something very idealistic, but at the same time simple, and achievable. Which, I've got huge plans for the future, so it's going to be incredible what we come up with. But you've got to define it for yourself. So again, sort of as we go through the process of the podcast and helping you through your journey, I think it's important to, I always say it, peel back sort of the layers and take time. These are the two sayings I always say. Peel back the layers and take time and discover what it is that makes you tick. Discover your core template, as I call it. Some people call it value structures. Some people call it blueprints. I call it your core template, because this is your template for yourself. This is the idealistic lifestyle I want. How do I get it? How do I know that I'm fulfilled even if I got it? Because fulfillment isn't, I've got all these things and now I'm fulfilled. Fulfillment is a feeling inside. And that's only something you can do with appreciation and with certain things like that, meditation, with reflection, and with understanding the universe in sometimes different ways. Sometimes you have to change the way you see things in order to appreciate them. And sometimes you have to see the way, change the way you see yourself in order to appreciate yourself. So I've been rambling now for, let's say, 20 odd minutes. This is just a sort of an intro to what we're going to be going into. I think I will call it the Mental Stability Podcast. I quite like that. So, where should we start? Start thinking about what would be needed for you in order to feel fulfilled, successful, happy, whatever you want to call it. And also understand whatever problem is lying in your way. Is it a certain addiction? Is it a feeling of loneliness? Is it a feeling of a fear, like a lack of loss or fear of loss? Is it a fear of, anything like that? It could literally be anything. What is it that you're searching for? Maybe it's a feeling. Maybe it's a place. Maybe it's a different lifestyle. And just sort of get that down in your head. And then as we go through, you can even request what you want me to cover. And I'll do one-on-one sessions like this where I sort of go dive deep into it. Obviously, I've also got the live Facebook stuff that I do. You've got the weekly newsletter that I put out. So if you want that, obviously just let us know and sign up to that. And I'll see you all soon. This has been the first episode. And let's kick it up a notch on episode 2. Check it out now. See you in a bit.